And hello and welcome to Hollywood Blockbusters. I am your host, Joe Hollywood. And once again, I am joined by Imaginos Pete.
Hey.
Andrew Walker.
Hello.
And joining us at the table, first time this year, George Johnson. Welcome back.
Yes.
Hey,
Hope you've been listening while you've been off.
Yes, actually I have. It's kind of interesting to listen at its faster speeds, too, so it's kind of nice.
And it's no fun, like, hearing us talk, and you're like, I need to say something
Oh,
about
no,
that.
I'm cussing under my breath. Like, what do you mean by that? Come on.
Idiots.
Idiots.
They're all idiots.
Well, you know, if,
Moron.
George,
You know what that's from, right?
From Princess Bride.
Yes.
Yeah.
if only
Morons.
if only George were here to, but he's not, so I guess he agrees with us.
Right.
So you get to chime in this week, and we have an interesting topic, and this has come up on the podcast in the past, and that is, can movies be flawless?
No.
Do they deserve? Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time. Now, do movies deserve 100% positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes? So we're going to discuss that. I have the website up, and I may take to it occasionally on the video version of our program.
Oh.
A lot of these movies, if you do a Google search for the 100% Club on Rotten Tomatoes, it'll take you to their list. And for some strange reason, it ends at 68, which is a weird number to end the list on. Now,
Should have just been one more.
I knew. Dang it! There's my Andrew Bingo. You couldn't help yourself, could you?
Andrew Bingo.
You knew there was a 69 joke coming.
So the weird thing is scrolling through that list, I have not heard of a lot of these movies.
Yes.
So
Same
I'm
here.
kind of counting on you guys to help me out here. And if not, we'll just blow past it to the next one.
That's so unfortunate.
All right. So Rotten Tomatoes. Now, everyone knows what Rotten Tomatoes is. And what I like about Rotten Tomatoes is it's a consensus. It's not just Siskel and or Ebert.
Right.
It's not just Richard Roper. It's a consensus of critics. Now, the system is still flawed because there are incels out there who want to destroy a movie out of spite, and so they'll post negative reviews, which throws it off. So it's not entirely an accurate representation, but I think it's the best thing we have right now, better than what I grew up with, watching critics on TV.
Sure.
So it's basically a consensus. Now, I'll never allow a critic to dictate whether or not I want to see a movie or not. But if I'm on the fence and I'm like, I don't know about this, then I'll go over to Rotten Tomatoes and see what people are saying. And if the reviews are, in the 20-30% positive, I'm like, I'm not wasting my money on that. But if it's in the positive, that might be the shove that I need to go see a movie. And I may or may not agree. Nick, do you allow critics to determine what you spend your money on?
I'd be lying if I said no. There is some influence. Look, that's just the way. That's human nature. You're going to defer to people with experts. I bring up what's the Dancing with the Stars. It's a guilty pleasure. I have no shame in admitting it. But they have the 3 professionals on there, and then they have the crowd voting. So in that, I've seen NFL players who are just south of brain damage advance. God bless them. I love them playing. I hate some of them as a fan. But they have advanced because the fans will vote them in because of popularity rather than them actually performing. They all put the work in, but then you see the professionals who say, "Look, listen, you got to do this step, which I can't pronounce." They don't do it, and then that's what happens.
That's a great point, because a lot of times when I do go to Rotten Tomatoes, the professional critics will give something, say, 98% positive, and the audience gives it 32. Or you'll see the opposite of that, where critics are like, this is trash, this is garbage. And then the Twilight movies will get 98. And I'm like, how can they be so far apart? So you take everything with a grain of salt.
Nick,
Andrew, what's your opinion on critics?
Nick, for what you just said, does it also apply to the American electorate?
Oh,
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I
it
agree.
does.
I agree.
That's another podcast for another time.
Yes, it does.
I'm like Nick, that I won't let a critic dictate, but there's going to be some influence. If 2 weeks before a movie is opening that I really want to see, but it gets a 45 on Rotten Tomatoes with 30 or 40 or 50 reviews,
Yeah.
and the aggregate is 40 or 50%, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
But above 60, that's usually a safe zone for me. It's like, okay, I'm going to be able to see the flaws while I'm watching it, maybe, but at least I'll enjoy it while I'm in the theater. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, Deadpool. I realized the flaws while I was watching it, but it was still fun.
Yeah.
Because I saw it with friends. I saw it in a packed theater. Movies like that. But I try not to let out. I trust myself mostly. With movies.
Yeah.
with
But you
rating
don't
them.
have all the information. All you pretty much have is a teaser trailer or something. So you're basing, your decision on seeing a movie based on what the studio wants you to see in a teaser trailer. So, the critics at least maybe have seen a screening or something. So you're getting more of the picture, I
That's
guess.
true. That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
George, do you allow
Yeah.
critics to influence your decision to see a movie?
Absolutely, and the reason is there's just too much to see. But
Mm-hmm.
so basically, I think of movies on a first distribution, or what do you call it? A first
First run or
no a where you get where you have three, what do you call it? 67, 95, 99, where you have the what is it called? Your first
the soft opening kind of stuff.
no. This is all in statistics.
Oh.
Statistics where you say
Oh,
one
the standard deviation.
standard deviation. Thank you. That's
Oh,
exactly what I was looking for. So first standard deviation is 66 or 67 ish, right? So for me, it's got to make a 6.7 or better. And
out of 10?
out of 10.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. So or like a
Or out of-
60s or what out of 100?
Yeah,
Yeah,
out of
67 out of 100.
Yeah.
But there's certain movies and certain genres that'll add or subtract to. So if it's a sweeping epic drama, whatever, typically I'll subtract like one or two, because a lot of times those, especially if they have, and this is what I was reacting on your comment, especially if they have a lot of actors in it, a lot of big name actors, and it becomes a vanity piece. There's been a number of things I've seen that have just been wildly loved and appreciated, and they're just garbage.
I agree.
They're
And I don't
overstuffed with.
Overstuffed
Yeah.
with, and it's just like, oh, this is and it's
yeah.
because none of the reviewers, I think, or whatever, they don't want to bash it. But
Sure.
but that being said, some of my favorite movies are in the fives, and so I've had to for example, comedy and sci-fi and horror, I'll add a 1 to that. So if it's a 5.7 in my head, it's closer to a 6.7 or 7. If you see a thriller at 6.5, that's a dang good thriller, because most of them fall in the 4 and 5s. So that's just me. And there's just too much to see out there. But you guys have given me recommendations that I've watched. I'm like, all right. And I'll sit down. I'm like, why the hell did this get so low? It's really actually pretty good. So
Yeah. And that applies
Yeah.
to comedies a lot.
comedies, exactly.
The professional critics
Yeah.
will give, say, an Adam Sandler or a Jim Carrey movie 30% or something, and the audience is giving it 70, 80% or higher. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go check this out. And I'll laugh my butt off and go, I don't understand this disparity.
Right.
Critics hate comedy, unless it's some highbrow, artsy thing. But critics in the Academy hate comedies, and I'll never understand that. I don't.
Yeah, they
get-
never, comedies never quite go high. I mean, you've got things like Forrest Gump, which could be considered a comedy because he's kind of a comedic person.
Yeah.
But there's also some war. I mean, it's hard to pigeonhole. It's a war. It's a comedy. It's a romance. It's a coming of age. It's all these different things. And so those will do well. But other ones like Adam Sandler movies, or Jim Carrey or Will Ferrell. Sometimes those are like the, I don't know what the Anchorman gets. I think it's hysterical, and there's some great scenes in it. Does it pan out at the end? No, it's got a stupid ending, and it's got a lot of problems with it.
It does.
But taken for the number of vignettes and for the people in it, it's hysterical. So you have to just
I
go with that.
think a reason why maybe critics don't respond that well to comedies is because they don't always age well.
Yeah.
Think about something that came out 30 years ago. Those jokes were funny, people thought they were funny
At the time.
at the time. 30 years later, it's like, oh,
Even though some do stand the
Some are
test of
timeless.
time.
Some are timeless.
Some do. But, and I think a lot of the critics will try to take a wider view of it rather than the specific average American going to see this movie when they see it.
Yeah.
So I see both sides of it,
Yeah.
but I think that might have something.
I
to do
mean, yeah, these are some good points. George, I think, brought up a great point because when it comes to comedy, there's this tendency they don't have to land the plane. You just have to enjoy the ride. The takeoff and the landing are not important. Whereas if you actually fly in real life, like, I think you need to stick the landing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they never work. Because you always say it comes up to, like, you bring up Anchorman. Like, that's a good point. There's funny moments all the way through, but
Yeah.
at the ending you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, where do
Don't
you
stick
go?
the
with-
landing.
And it
Yeah.
happens a lot with that. But that also being said, when it comes to comedy, nothing ages well. There's going to be stuff right now that people are laughing at right now. Look, I laughed at a lot of jokes. Look, you can watch stuff in Community in the mid 2020s. There were like homophobic jokes in there.
Yeah.
That would be considered homophobic, but everyone laughed at the time. You still laugh at the stuff back in the 30s and 40s right now. It's just comedy's at one spot where
Yeah.
everyone, if they get offended, it's the fool that can call out the king.
On the recent Saturday
That
Night
is a
Live.
very good point.
Well, this follows up on that point because if you watch the recent Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special,
Oh.
they did the in memoriam segment of sketches that have not aged well, and they've in the past have done blackface,
Yep.
and they've done ethnic humor, and they've done pedophilia humor, and
Chevy
all sorts
Chase
of stuff.
saying the N-word.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that was hysterical.
So yeah, not
Yeah.
But terrible by today's standards.
Yeah,
Right, right.
but not like you're right. Not all comedy ages well. So
Yeah.
the comedies that I consider classics are the ones you're not necessarily embarrassed to watch with friends and family.
Well, then
So,
you've got things that have aspects of comedy, like Willy Wonka comes to mind. There's some really fun
Yeah.
parts in there. Maybe that's a kids movie. Maybe it doesn't count. But like maybe when Harry Met Sally or Napoleon Dynamite. I don't know. There's some things that Blazing Saddles,
Caddyshack
Bride
comes
of
to
Frankenstein,
mind.
or not Bride of Frankenstein,
Young
Young
Frankenstein.
Young
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Thank you. That I can just go back to time and time again and go, this is still kick-ass writing
is.
in today's day.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I look to critics for validation more than anything else. Like, I'll go see a movie and then see what the critics are saying and go, wait a second, how can we be that far apart? So, but I do allow critics to kind of sway me one way or another. Now, the first decade of Marvel movies, I was in the theater no matter what. I'm like, Marvel can do no wrong. It's no longer like that.
It
it's
was
not a
that way
gimme.
for the first decade. It
Yeah.
was mind-blowing.
It's not a gimme anymore. And so, I had every intention of seeing the new Captain America Brave New World movie. And then I started seeing the reviews, and I'm like, I might hold off on that for a little
Yeah.
while. It's getting trashed. So, yeah, Marvel and Disney aren't as foolproof as they used to be.
Marvel is the equivalent of what the old lines used to be. That's when it's on the goal line. You just need to run it 1 yard up there, and they go 5 wide spread, and they drop back.
They drop it
seven
back.
step.
Exactly.
And it's, for anyone in football, basically, like, instead of going forward 3 feet, you go back 25 feet.
Yeah,
And all 4 chances you get.
yeah. You have 1 yard to a touchdown, but you're in shotgun where you have to
And
move the
that's
ball.
what Marvel
10,
did. They
15 yards.
they
Yeah.
fumbled it. They fumbled the ball. They had the
Yeah.
recipe. You just had to do a couple of tweaks. I mean, the big failure to me before Avengers Endgame, which is when the beginning of the end for me, was Iron Man 3, maybe, and that's about it. Because that movie, I
Really?
just kind of saw it, and I was like,
I really like that. I know
I
a lot of people
liked
did.
Iron Man 3 too.
I liked it better than 2. I thought 2
Two,
was
I
yeah.
thought 2
tough
was
watch.
fantastic. I liked all 3 of them personally.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's when you start to see small cracks in it. But as long as you had the Avengers that could bring it all together,
Yeah.
you were fine.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you get Thor 2, the second one. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
The first 2 Thors I did not like. at
Yeah.
all.
See, I mean,
Really?
Really? I
Yeah.
enjoyed the first
I enjoyed
one.
the
thought
first
it had
one.
a lot
The second
of humor
one,
in it.
yeah,
the second one was awful.
Really?
I couldn't get through
Okay.
it. I turned
mean,
it off. Yeah.
Captain America kept having good ones like that.
Oh,
I
yes.
enjoyed First Avenger. I really enjoyed Winter Soldier with Robert Redford and those guys. And then
Yeah.
they had Civil War, so they brought everybody in. So
Yeah.
they had this formula, and they said, you know what? I feel like throwing a wrench into it. I'm like, it's kind of the ship's working. You don't have to mess it up.
Yeah. I felt for the longest time that the worst Marvel movies during that first 10 years were better than most movies that were also in the theater. at the
That's
same
true.
time.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed a lot of them.
Well, one last thought here,
Yeah.
and that is if you ever read a book about, I listened to a book. It's about the internet, and it's about how Apple created this computer that nobody knew what to do with it. It could do anything, and the killer app was there. And what does this have to do with movies? Well, they started to show people you can actually do some animation. And they're like, what does that mean? You can actually do some animation. So they put together some first little bits, and that turned into the prequel, which became Toy Story. But the important thing was that the way that these people were creating this, they were not movie executives. They were not directors of photography. They were not story writers. And they would get all these people into a room, and they would say, okay, what's going on? Why isn't this character working? What do we need to do with the software? How do we create this? And that process created Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3. It created Monsters, Inc. 1, Monster 2.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very different process.
Yeah.
That process worked pretty darn well for the first decade.
Oh, they could do no wrong.
They could do no
Pixar,
wrong. Incredible.
every movie was a
I'm getting chills thinking about it. Was
masterpiece.
a masterpiece.
It was Murderer's Row.
It was.
Kept having one after another. I'm like,
You
wow.
just they could not go wrong.
Yeah.
Once they turned it into the Marvel machine that kicked out
Star Wars and
the
Marvel,
Star Wars,
Pixar.
it just everything wilted, and it's just terrible now.
Yeah, it's almost.
But
like
there was a
too
lot
much.
more on the line, and it was a lot more people who were really trying to make the screen and it's a fascinating story because they would get all these people in the room and they would start talking about the story, which was kind of secondary, but they worked on they brought in we're gonna have to sell some plush toys and things. So they brought these people in and they're like, what do we do? And they're like, could you have Woody be a little more this? Could you have him be a little bit more dramatic? Could you have him do this? And all of that shaped it. Who's done that since? It's fascinating to me because that has now been lost. Marvel has now been lost.
Yeah.
Star Wars is nothing compared to what it was.
Oh,
Nothing's on the line anymore. If you look at music nowadays,
It's all very safe.
I was listening to music at the airport. It's 2-chord songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not even the chorus is over the same 2 chords. All of this is gone. If AI takes over, who knows? But anyway, that's the end of my.
No, that's a great point. No. All right, so we're going to go to Rotten Tomatoes. Let me bring it up on our screen here. And they have these movies ranked, which makes no sense because they all have 100% positive from professional critics. So I'm not sure what the rankings are supposed to mean. But the number one movie on the list is a movie called Leave No Trace. Came out in 2018. The consensus says Leave No Trace takes an effectively low-key approach to potentially a sensationalistic story. Further benefits from brilliant work by Ben Foster and Thomasin McKenzie. The synopsis is a father and daughter live in a perfect but mysterious existence in Forest Park, a beautiful nature reserve near Portland, Oregon, and then it goes on. I've never heard of this movie. I know nothing about it. It was not on my radar. Have any of you seen or even heard of this movie called Leave No Trace?
I was looking at that
I'm just looking
earlier
at this now.
today at work, and I was like, nope,
Yeah.
never heard of this.
I'm intrigued. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
check it out now.
Well, I'm sure Robert has a full six
Yeah,
page,
Robert is I'm sure the
paragraph
only one
review.
that has seen all these movies and can finish out the list to make it 100. Like he has. the other
he's
30
already got a 1 or 2 liner that he
Yeah.
can tell you about it. Yeah.
He's
Oh,
already
yeah.
got the other 32.
So
I'm messaging him right now. Have you seen Leave No Trace?
now, because of that, we're going to kind of skim through this. We're not going to go through every movie in detail. But, George, you just brought this movie up recently. It's number 2 on the list, one of my all-time favorite movies, Toy Story 2.
Love it.
Later on the list is Toy Story 1. I have to agree that, for me, the first 3 Toy Story movies are perfect movies. They're flawless.
Agreed.
The 4th one I wasn't a big fan of because they kind of broke the band up in Toy Story 4, so
Yeah.
I don't really count Toy Story 4. But that trilogy of Toy Story movies, to me, are perfect.
Agreed.
Perfect
Agreed.
films. And right out of the gate, like Toy Story 1, obviously it was the first fully animated movie, 100%, computer animated movie. And right out of the gate, they just knocked it out of the park. And then it's like, how do you follow that up? And then they do Toy Story 2,
which was even better.
yeah, and it like had tears in your eyes. And
Yes,
then,
you did.
And then the third one, where Andy grows up and he's done playing with toys. I'm sobbing like an idiot
I
in
am
the
too.
theater with those movies. So I'm going to agree here and say that the Toy Story movies, to me, deserve to be a member of the 100% Club. Do you guys agree or disagree? Nick, let's start with you.
since the operating premise is that I don't think any movie is 100%.
We've established that.
But I could easily put this at 99%. I'd have no qualms. Toy Story 2 at 99%.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because this is a question that I wanted to ask you guys as it came up. Give me a flaw that knocks, say, Toy Story 2 specifically, from 100% to 99%. Can you come up with a flaw in these movies?
If I went looking for a flaw, I'll find it. I absolutely find. There's something like in a plot or story was like why they didn't need to do that. Like that wouldn't make sense. But you did it because you need to get the joke in, or you needed that scene because it'd be memorable. But no, I mean like if you have to go looking for flaws. It's not readily evident. If you watch a few times, like wait, why did they do that? Maybe, but at that point you're biased for enjoying the movie. Like I'm just gonna let it slide.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the 99. It allows you to let some stuff slide, and you still get the 100% flavor.
Now, the list that I created of movies that I think should be 100%, as I went down my favorite movies list, every once in a while I come across a movie and a flaw would pop into my head, and I would say, nope, that's not going to make the list. And one of those movies that might surprise people is The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I love The Empire Strikes Back. It's darker than the original. It's more epic. It's more layered and textured. But I'll never forget the moment sitting in the theater watching it for the first time when they're like, Han Solo is in the clutches of Jabba the Hutt. Let's go rescue him. The end. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? You're ending the movie here? And I remember being furious sitting in the theater. So The Empire
you had to wait
Strikes Back.
3 years?
3 years for
3
the
years.
conclusion.
That's torture.
Yeah.
When they came out with Lord of the Rings, I'm like, when is the next one coming out? Like 3 years from now? They're like, no, next year. I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
And people today are spoiled. They get a
Yeah.
sequel every year.
Yeah.
Sometimes twice in 1 year.
They get an episode in 10 seconds.
Or an entire season in one sitting.
That's right. But what were you saying? Continue on.
So my point
Start.
is, for a movie to make my list, it has to be flawless. And in my opinion, the Toy Story movies are flawless. Andrew, do you agree with the Toy Story movies?
For sure for the first one. I saw it when I was, I think, 11 when it came out. I saw it in the theater. And I think if I would have been a little bit older, maybe I wouldn't have had the same, like, magical. Because at 11, you're on the precipice of being a bratty teen. But I remember watching it and just thinking, wow, I've never seen anything like this, this type of animation. And even today at 40, I'm not a big animation fan, but there's something about those 90s and early 2000s DreamWorks movies that are beautiful.
You mean Pixar?
DreamWorks.
I mean,
Pixar.
DreamWorks did some good
DreamWorks
stuff
had some
too,
great stuff too.
Shrek.
But yeah, Pixar. Yeah.
But that, and I saw the first Toy Story several times. I've only seen Toy Story 2 and 3 once each.
Yeah.
Over 20 years ago, so I don't really remember them that well, so I can't speak of them. I haven't seen the fourth one. But that first Toy Story
Magic.
has a special place in my
It's
heart.
iconic. I mean, you look up at
Yeah.
a shelf in my living room, and you'll see Buzz and Woody sitting on a shelf in my apartment. You know, those movies spoke to me. It was just something about them. George, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thought is I was older, obviously, and I was going along with some friends, and they said they were taking their kids. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to sit through this thing, and it was so incredibly well done.
Yeah.
That I forgot it was a kids movie and fell right into it.
Yeah.
And genuinely appreciated it for what it was, because it was so well written and it was so engaging. You go back to it now, and the graphics aren't all that great, but yeah, I mean, like when part 2 came out, I thought, oh, this is gonna completely, die. And when they said it was better, I'm like,
Right.
How could it be better? And yet
And it was.
it was.
Yeah.
And a lot of care and detail and attention went to just everything in there. And you laughed, you cried, you thought it was the best thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that kids, with all due respect, picked up on all that. It's multi-generational.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The Pixar movies in general kind of remind me of the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons that I grew up with, that at a certain age, you got a certain something out of it. But then the adults got something different out of it. And when you go back and watch like old Bugs Bunny cartoons, you're like, you see a joke and you go, oh, I didn't pick up on that when I was a kid. And so that's what Pixar brings to the table is, if you're a parent and you have to drag your kid to the theater to see a movie, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to get something out of it.
When I saw Shrek and they're walking toward the castle and Shrek says, I don't know, do you think he's compensating for something? And everybody was laughing. The kids were like, what does that mean? I'm like, this was intended. That went over the kids' heads
That's
straight
not
to
for
me.
you. That's for daddy.
Eat the popcorn, kiddies. That's my joke.
I just heard back from Robert. It made his runners-up list of 2018, but not his top 10.
Not his top 10?
No.
Okay.
Well, all right.
100%.
There's so much. There's so much to say
Tell
right
him
now.
he's wrong.
There's so much to say. Just the fact. God bless you, Robert.
We love you, Robert.
Is he listening?
Yeah.
He
He
just
is
texted.
listening. Oh, he did. Yeah.
We'll put him on.
We'll put him on speakerphone.
It's just. I am not at all. I would have. I mean, you'd have even money in Vegas that Robert absolutely would know what those obscure
Oh, sure.
movies.
And I'm sure he knows this next one. Number 3 on
Look,
the
the
list.
man is an artist, though. That's the man is a creator and he's an artist. So
From 2024, number 3 on the 100% Club, All We Imagine as Light.
It's an Indian film, right?
The synopsis is the light, the lives, and the textures of contemporary working class Mumbai
No.
are explored and celebrated by writer-director
It is an
Payal Kapadia. Yeah, 100%. I'm familiar with the title. I don't know anything about it. I never saw it.
Andrew, there are literally
Help
about
me here.
650 million Indian movies that come out a year. Despite being of the people, I am not for every one of those movies.
We all turn and look at you.
Yeah.
Help us out. Bail us out here. So no one saw
I heard-
this one?
I haven't seen.
I heard it was.
unfortunately,
I
no.
heard it was on a lot of people's top 10 lists, but I don't know much else about it.
Okay. Let's move on to number 4, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, which I believe was a
Just-
Netflix film.
Just came out. Yeah.
100% 2024. I'm not a huge Wallace and Gromit guy.
Same
I,
here.
I
you're
saw
missing
Chicken
out.
Run. I think I enjoyed Chicken Run because that was done in the style of The Great Escape.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen many of the other ones. A lot of times when it comes to animated flicks, I just instantly dismiss them as like kid stuff.
Me too.
And then people are like, no.
It's a mistake sometimes. It
Yeah.
is. I mean, if it's like SpongeBob goes to the movies or something, that's you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
But there's other stuff that I don't know how else to say this. But if I wanted to create something for everybody and I didn't offend everybody, but still had a really, really great script and a really great premise, it would wind up as G, and everybody would say, "Oh, it's a kids movie."
Right.
No, it's a lot of these are not quote unquote kids movies. Okay, so somebody doesn't get raped or something that would make it R, or you don't see something. But a lot of these deal with real emotions,
Yeah.
and they're really well written.
Kids can see them, but
Kids
they're not
can see them.
necessarily made for kids. Made for
Right.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bring the kids. But Conclave, I didn't take seriously. But that was PG. There was not one swear word in it or anything, and it was fun. And it was a mystery and a thriller. And I thought, how did you do that? It's PG and it's a mystery and a thriller.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was not a strong mystery, but more of a thriller. How do you do that?
Yeah. Along those lines,
Amazing.
I got angry at George Lucas one time. I think when the
One
Phantom, when the Phantom Menace came out and Jar Jar was getting criticized, he said, "Well, I threw that in for the kids," and that pissed me off because that goes against everything that George Lucas stood for. When he released Star Wars, kids loved it, adults loved it, everybody
Yeah.
loved it. It wasn't a kids movie.
It wasn't.
Everyone loved it. You can't set out to make a kids movie. You should set out to make a movie that kids and adults can enjoy. And
But
some of the
Didn't he say
worst
Star
movies-
Wars was for kids when he first started? Isn't that what when he now?
I mean,
he might be going
it's
back
a
and
pretty adult film in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
Hans,
I mean, it's
cold-blooded
he
killer.
was trying to make.
I
He
mean,
was trying to make like I was thinking of like an old Saturday morning cartoon and stuff. And he says that in retrospect.
Okay.
You do those interviews in the night. I'm like, I don't know, George. He kind of assassinated that Greedo guy.
yeah.
You know?
But I heard the same thing that he did that specifically for kids with the Ewoks.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, right?
I guess.
But the thing is,
but not a lot of people are fans
you,
of the Ewoks.
You were very young when you saw Return of the Jedi, and you enjoyed the Ewoks.
Well, I was a teenager by then, and I remember looking around like, what the hell is this? So I wasn't. We talked about this recently on a podcast. To me, Return of the Jedi could be a Muppet movie. Like it's just full
Absolutely.
of Muppets.
I mean,
So
There are some really great scenes, but you have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole thing with Jabba the Hutt, which is a lot of it's Muppets and things like
Yeah.
that. And then you also have Ewoks. and it does reduce it to somebody. There was a gravity though that Empire had.
Yeah.
That was
right.
phenomenal.
Darkness. Yeah.
And you did have Yoda in there, and everybody loved Yoda, which is where I think the Ewoks came from. Let's have a whole batch of these,
Now you're talking to the guy who lived, breathed, and ate Star Wars growing up, and
I defer to you.
The origin story of the Ewoks is originally it was supposed to be a planet of Wookiees.
Yep.
But they said that they wanted an underdog. Wookiees can easily beat up a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Ewoks not so much. So they wanted the Ewoks to be underdogs. So it's not like George Lucas set out to say, "Oh, we're going to put some teddy bears in there for the kids."
Well,
it kind of evolved into that. But
And yet I heard that the stuffed animal or stuffed plush toy, whatever, that made them an extra $10 billion or something. I don't
course.
remember what it was. So I mean, it was all calculated from the
when he
get-go.
got the merchandise.
Merchandising.
I just wish he'd pay attention to a story. You can't have the Emperor saying, "And an entire legion of my best troops," the ones that got killed by teddy bears. Is that who you're talking about? The legion of your best troops? Like that's all SEAL Team 6 down there?
This,
and Teddy Rupskin killed them? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
This latest technology
With a rock?
With a rock.
The armor is supposed to be like this advanced technology, and they got beat by sticks and rocks. Let's move on to number 5, a movie I'm not familiar with, Gloria, 2013. Synopsis: an aging divorcee embarks on an intense affair with a man she picked up at a blah, 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 and it goes. Gloria, 100%?
Nope.
Anyone saw it? Anyone familiar with it?
Never heard of it.
It's shocking. Shocking to me that these movies are on this list.
We're all Andrew tonight.
So, his house. We're pulling an Andrew. You're a verb,
Yeah,
Andrew.
you've now
Well,
you've now
okay,
been
but
verbed.
what does this say about us? This is fascinating. What are we finding out about this? That all of us haven't seen a few of these movies, and I'm looking through this list.
Yeah.
Seymour, an introduction, Tales of the Grim Sleeper, Night Will Fall, Next Goal Wins, Petite Queen. We call ourselves maybe experts at this, and yet
No.
Virunga, The Circle,
Oh, look.
Christmas Again.
You know, a lot of these movies you were only able to see at the Maple, or you had to it was in a local theater for a
Okay,
week
so maybe it's
before it
not our
disappeared.
fault.
It's not accessible, not just to us, but to movie-going audiences. And a lot of these films, they premiere in New York and L.A.
And that's it.
in that Oscar window at the end of the year, so they get eligible for the Oscars. Who can see these movies?
So, but why
It's
do
a
they make
limited
this list, and why they're not on the forefront of everybody's
Because
mind?
the critics, now keep in mind, these 100% reviews are from professional critics who get invited to those screenings. They go to those limited viewings. They're the ones that make this list. This does not take into consideration the movie-going audience.
See, this movie right here, Virunga, it had 22 critics, and all 22 of them said,
See, that doesn't
This
seem
is great.
fair. It seems
No.
like there should be a minimum number like 50. Or
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the minimum threshold.
of course, the larger sample size you have, it's going to be the more
diverse. It's going to be more diverse. And
the more diverse, but also
It's
it's going to
gonna-
carry more weight.
It's going to carry more weight. If
Yeah,
you have more
you're
people
right.
agreeing with that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
Look,
Yeah.
I will. I'm not going to include the rest of you with me. I am an uncultured troglodyte. I fully admit it.
We weren't going to say anything. But
Yeah,
no,
no,
I'm just kidding.
It's important. But no, but when I look at this, some of these movies are made because I'm sure there's some excellent movies that we miss that if you actually watch it, you'd be moved to tears and it'll make you think and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's great. That's what art's supposed to do. There's no money in it
You're
because
right.
you're making movies and you're releasing it, and for the people that don't get your vision, they pay for your vision unless you're paying for it on your own. And if you're going to pay for it, you don't have the resources to go to 3,000 theaters.
Right.
You're not. It's not going to play in the sticks. You
Yeah.
don't know where it is. Now, where you could get some help is if you do a blockbuster, we'll attach your pet project to it. It used to be like the old double features.
Yeah.
So if you buy Iron Man, you'll get Gloria. If you buy, Deadpool, you'll get Leave No. What was number one on this list? Leave No Trace
Behind.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. And then you'll sit there and watch Iron Man. The hell is this? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll check it out. Oh wow.
You know, I read books
Help
about
the artists out.
Yeah, I read books about Hollywood studios and their history and stuff. I just finished one recently about 20th Century Fox. And the philosophy during that golden age of Hollywood was we do the popular movies that generate big box office, and that allows us to do the the art films that might lose money at the box office. But there was an integrity there where the studio moguls were like, I want to do these prestige picks. I want to win an Oscar. So the popular stuff allowed them to do that, but not everybody went to the theaters to see those art flicks Oscar winners.
And that's a great point. They do that even now. You'll have all the A-list actors that'll do a big budget movie because they get that paycheck to pay for their project because they'll be the producer on it. Look, and there's some of them. I wish they all had the professional work ethic of, say, Harrison, who just did the last Captain America movie, as a Hulk. And when you do a lot of CG, these guys go like, "What am I looking at?" Okay, to his credit, as whatever flaws you want to say about Harrison Ford, they say he's a professional. He'll bring his A game on every picture.
Sure.
Depending on how much role.
Sure.
If he's there for a cameo, then you got me out of bed. Yeah, but if he plays a significant role, he'll bring his A game.
Yeah.
He'll give you, because he says, "Look, I don't know what this picture is, but I'm getting paid. But the audience who pays the comic book audience or the fans deserve a quality performance."
Yeah.
I can't say anything about the script, but you'll get my performance. I respect those people, just like when they did back then.
Now, something that happened, which would be considered a fluke during the Golden Age, is they would put out an art movie for a really meager budget, and it would be a blockbuster, and it would like save a studio.
Well,
you
look what just happened to The Brutalist, $10 million. I'm still freaking out about that. Please continue.
Yeah, I was gonna say movies like It Happened One Night. Clark Gable, Claudette Colbert.
They did that on a shoestring budget.
They were like punished. They're like, go do this little B movie.
And it
and
turned
they
out to be
hated being there. They didn't want to be part of it, and they all won Oscars. Like everybody
chemistry,
won Oscars.
and it was phenomenal. Have you seen It Happen One Night?
No,
It's wonderful.
It's one of the best movies ever. Casablanca. Casablanca was a black and white B movie that wasn't supposed to amount to anything. They're like, who's going to care about the French resistance in Asia or whatever? And the direction, the writing, the acting, the performances.
It's
everything.
a Wonderful Life, same thing. Little House, a little Shop Around the Corner. Was another thing. I mean, there's just a bunch of them that.
Yeah.
So I do like the idea that they're creating these blockbusters so that it's almost like.
Prestige is important too.
Prestige is important. Yeah, that's true. But it's almost like I got to go do this to make this much money so that they'll get off my back so that I can take some actual license and do these other things. Why don't they have that to begin with? Maybe that's a great idea. Go do this, make a ton of money for us first, beat your heart to death on that, then we'll give you a little budget to do that. And it's those small budget things that wind up, the flower grows out of the cow manure. It's just fantastic.
Ben Affleck did that. Sorry, no, I mean with the whole Batman thing. You play Batman. It's like, well, he had a couple of pet projects, like something about it was a Cuban story that he wanted to tell. I forgot the name of it, but he did it. I mean, I don't know what accolades it won, but Warner Brothers said, okay, we'll give you the budget for that as long as you be Batman.
Oh, was it the one with the plane that gets caught in the Middle East?
Argo?
No.
Argo?
No, he did that after. Argo came before. This is like after he had just done The Town and a couple other things like that.
Yeah.
So
now, you got me thinking, and I hope I'm telling this right, but Robert Zemeckis, he was like pulled off of a movie because he had a flop or whatever, and he ended up doing Romancing the Stone, and that was kind of a low-budget thing that turned out to be a monster hit in like 83 or something. What did Romancing the Stone beget? It begat Back to the Future. So we would not have a Back to the Future if it wasn't for a low-budget movie that became a monster hit in Romancing the Stone. So it's really fascinating to see the domino effect on these movies. So,
and it also comes down to marketing. Look, if they went out on a full marketing blitz for Casablanca or The Brutalist, like the way, look, you can't go to Starbucks and be like, get this very depressing. It's like Sophie's Choice. Like, which choice do you want? Do you want an espresso Americano? Like, this is not the type of choice I should be making. I can't equate this to Sophie's Choice. It'd just be weird. But if they put the type of marketing they did, they put them on all the local talk shows, Jimmy Fallon, Kimmel. Yeah, you'd probably be like, I never heard this, but they're on Kimmel, so I'll go watch it. It's almost like what we're talking about the critics. Like, I never heard this movie, but heck, I'll go watch it.
But that's another good point, though. How do you market? Like, take the movies that are nominated for an Oscar coming up in a few weeks. How do you market some of these films? It's tough to put together a trailer on something like a Nora, put it on broadcast television, and go, "Hey, America, go see this movie about this hooker who marries this Russian kid who does coke." How do you sell that movie? It's like
I've never seen a trailer for it on TV.
and that's where I sympathize with the suits. You know, the suit. They said like, like Frank, what do you want me to do with this movie?
How do you
man?"
pitch? How do you pitch a movie like that?
You know,
It's crazy.
It's like when Jody walks in. I want the accused to be marketed. Like, Jody, we can't market the accused.
So what do they do? They show it in New York, they show it in L.A., and they hope for awards. And then when it starts to get buzz, then maybe people go see it.
They got to think of any way they can get buzz.
Yeah.
Like Steven comes in. So I want to go to McDonald's and I'm pitching Schindler's List.
Are we going to do happy
Well,
Happy
okay,
Meal toys?
But if we're going to talk about begat, what begat? I mean, Schindler's List. I don't think you could ever go in and say, "I'm going to show." I mean, this has got to be one of the all-time tragedies. So what begat that?
Well, his
15
popular
other
movies.
Is all his popular movies that came
Park,
before it.
Jurassic Park.
And the fact, the only way he could sell this is, "I'm Spielberg."
Oh, exactly.
You know,
that's exactly.
in
what
fact, he
happened.
did. He did
Go
Schindler's
jump in a
List.
cold lake if you don't like it, but I'm doing this movie and it's an important movie to me.
Yeah.
They were
Done.
they were doing principal photography of Schindler's List as post production of Jurassic Park was going on.
Yeah.
He was on set of Schindler's
They
List
were
going,
back to back.
and then he'd go look at like, I love the T-Rex, go for it, and shoot the and go ahead, cue Nazis. You're like, wow, Steven.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, in that early part of Spielberg's career, the critics were just waiting to pounce on him. And then he does a little movie called 1941, and they're like, Spielberg is done in this industry. He will never work again. And that came out like in 1980, 81, something like that, after Jaws, you know. And then he started doing things like E.T. and Close Encounters was before that. But they were like, Spielberg's a hack. And then he rebounded from that. And I actually kind of like 1941. But those movies, when you say what begat what, Close Encounters, Jaws, E.T., all that begat Schindler's List. We wouldn't have had a Schindler's List without E.T.
I love that. I love that you brought that up. That's so cool. I'm waiting for an M. Night Shyamalan to come out of the because those first few were fantastic, and I don't know the most recent one. I don't remember what it is. It's only okay, but Trap. It's okay.
I didn't care much for it.
Yeah.
I think he was a victim of his own fingerprint. They kept expecting the Sixth Sense to happen
Yeah.
over and over.
Twist,
Like, don't do it, M. Night.
No.
Start diversifying that portfolio, man.
I heard it was just basically his attitude.
Yeah.
And who surrounded himself with sycophants and all that. But who knows?
All right. He's not going to go anywhere near 100% positive movie. Here's a classic that's at number 7. I saw it once. I thought it was okay. 1940, The Philadelphia Story. Have you guys seen it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
There were some Oscar winners in there, and it was
This is Jimmy
Hepburn.
Stewart,
Catherine
Grant,
Catherine Hepburn, who was labeled box office poison at this point in her career,
and
then
she just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah. So I saw it. I liked it. I think I need to revisit it again. But
Were you going to say you didn't like it?
No, it's not. I didn't not like it. It was just one of those deals where I'd heard a lot about it. I bought it on DVD. I sat down and watched it. And I went, it was all right. Like I didn't think it was great. I thought it was okay.
It wasn't worthy of the 100% hype.
That particular one, no. But I need to revisit it.
It's a good movie.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Let's kind of move ahead on this. 7 Samurai. Yeah.
Oh yes,
I love
it's
it.
on my list right here. 7 Samurai.
When you think, if we were to come up with a list of movies that pretty much inspired an entire genre, you could go all the way back to the Big Bang known as 7 Samurai. When you think about the Dirty Dozen and the Magnificent Seven and all these movies where a group of misfits come together, it all pays tribute to 7 Samurai.
The 7 Samurai's coaching tree makes Bill Walsh and Bill Belichick's coaching tree look silly. That's how I'll put it for sports. 7 Samurai coaching tree is the GOAT.
I do think 7 Samurai though has absolutely fantastic, and part of it is it's got really great diverse characters, all very diverse.
Yeah.
You can see how, I mean, just about every outer space movie that is basically a Western, which is basically a samurai movie.
You're absolutely right.
It's all strange, but it's like, how does this ragtag group of guys overcome? Okay, that's Star Wars, or that's Firefly, or that's any number of outer space. Yeah. But what's really cool about this is that they have a number of vignettes in it that are just fantastic. And so you've got your A story is the bad guys are coming, we got to prepare.
Yeah.
And then you got a bunch of little B stories in there. And the B stories, each one of them are just, you fall in love with the characters and everything. And so it's all these B stories wrapped into a kick-ass A story, and it pulls it off at the end. And it's just so good.
You know, being a movie buff, sometimes I wish I can just get my memory wiped, because when you see a movie like Seven Samurai, you see the influences and everything that comes after it. And then you watch a series like The Mandalorian, and you're like, well, I like this better when it was called Seven Samurai. There's actually an episode of The Mandalorian where a group of misfits have to protect villagers from invading forces. Yep. Where have I seen this before?
That's the one that Bryce Dallas Howard directed.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
Yeah.
And then there was
It's a Bug's Life.
And there's a series of movies. I don't know if you've ever heard of a series of Japanese films called Lone Wolf and Cub, about a hero and a child. Where have we seen that recently on the Disney Channel?
Yeah.
Little baby Yoda.
But there's only so many what's the word I'm looking for? Tropes or whatever you know.
And you just keep dusting them off, man. Yeah.
We need to figure out a way to invent a new trope that no one has thought of.
Well, that's the thing. Like, to each new generation, they see something like that for the first time and go, "This is brilliant." I'm we've seen this a dozen times, but I don't want to ruin it for them. But that's why I feel like I'm in a point where I'm like, I need something new and
like
fresh.
The orphan kid who goes on to do great things. Luke Skywalker. Superman. Jesus. Yeah. It's all the same story.
Well, yeah.
You know,
the chosen one goes back to Christ. Matrix. You know.
Can we stop calling Superman an orphan? He had a damn home. He was a baby. He didn't even know his parents. He grew up in Kansas, for God's sakes. The man had a dog growing up. You know what? Screw Superman for that. He's not an orphan. Yes, technically he does. His birth parents are gone. The man was raised.
It was a short period of time before, and he didn't have to. I mean, he went from one parents to the next.
I mean, if we're going to go true orphan, then I guess you could put Bruce on there but he had Alfred, and he had $1 billion
to cry himself to sleep at
my
night.
God.
All right, what's the next one?
I'm kind of jumping ahead now. I forgot I had that up on the screen there. Singing in the Rain, 100% Club.
Absolutely, 1,000%. 1,000%. It's a love story. It's a comedy. It's singing. It's dancing. It's beautifully directed and acted.
Most people call it the greatest musical ever made.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree, with the exception of definitely
West Side?
Sound of Music.
Sound of
Music is a love story. It's a war story. It's a family story. It has got some of the most earworm jingly songs that we still sing today. I mean, it's fantastic. It's
what about
redemption.
Chim Chimmery? Damn it, George, Chim Chimmery.
Okay. Mary Poppins is great too. That's up there. Yeah. Mary Poppins is definitely up there. And with part 2 where Van Dyke comes out and you're like, wait a minute, he's playing himself, but he was playing himself. He was playing that role 60 years ago. It freaks my mind out. Yeah. It breaks my mind. Anyway, go on.
All right, here's a movie that generated some discussion in the office today. Does the Terminator, the original Terminator, deserve to be on the 100% positive list, 100% club? Now, the only flaw that I can think of the original Terminator was some of the stop motion stuff toward the end of the movie doesn't age
Looks
very
a little
well.
herky-jerky.
Stop motion in general hasn't aged well. You almost have to try to ignore it, but it's hard. So I wouldn't give the Terminator 100%. What I would give 100% to is T2. I think Terminator 2
blew my
deserves
mind.
to be in the 100%
Absolutely.
club. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Terminator 1 is definitely not on the 100% list.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, I enjoyed it more than Terminator, the first one, and I think it's a better movie. It's close. It's in the 90s, high 90s. But like I said, if we go looking for flaws, we'll find it.
Yeah.
And I always had a problem with Terminator's time travel.
Well,
Terminator 2 is really whacked out that way.
Yeah.
I think I like both Terminators equally. And
Oh, interesting.
I would maybe even the first one a little bit better. And back to what you just said, though, Joe. You said that the stop motion hasn't aged well, but
At the time.
if you were to see this for the first time in the theater 40 years ago, through that lens.
Now you're talking to a guy who sat in a theater
Right.
and watched
So
Terminator
I'm
for
asking-
the
You're
first
Talking
time.
to two guys who did. That's
I'm
exactly
asking
right.
the 20-something-year-old
Yeah.
Joe.
20-something.
Did you really? Were you really aware of that when you were watching
You're
it?
probably
Okay.
you're probably
Okay.
18, right?
As a kid, I always found stop motion distracting. Going back to the Ray Harryhausen movies,
King
of
Kong.
Sinbad, King Kong, all that, you try to ignore, like in the original King Kong, you see the fingerprints of the puppeteers as they
And the fur,
would
it's
move
moving
him.
around.
Yeah,
from frame
and
to
you
frame.
have to ignore it. But it was, to me, stop motion was always a distraction. Even in The Empire Strikes Back, they would show a tauntaun running
Yeah.
across the snow, and it always looked stop motion to me. So stop motion was kind of a placeholder until Jurassic Park comes along,
Yes,
and you
with
go,
that
"Oh
new-
my God,
that new
they cracked
technology.
the
They've
code."
nailed it.
Yep.
Yeah, they've nailed
And
it.
I don't know if you ever heard the story about how they were trying to figure out how to depict the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. So they had Phil Tippett, who did all the stop motion on Star Wars. They're like, "You do your thing," and then there was this guy who was like, "I think we can do this computer animated."
Yes,
and when
I
they
did
played
see
them
that.
side by side.
And he wasn't getting anybody's attention, and they
Yeah.
were walking. As I remember, they were just going to walk by
He
his
had
desk,
it playing on the computer,
and he had it played, and they
deliberately.
went, "What?"
Yeah,
And suddenly he got a new title, he got more budget, he got a
Yeah.
new team. Please continue.
no, you're finishing my thought.
I
and that-
love that.
and
That's such a great story.
And that
Yeah.
spawned the line in Jurassic Park when they said paleontologists are in trouble or whatever, and Jeff Goldblum goes, "Don't you mean extinct?" That's what they said in
This
the
Phil Tippett
offices
said it.
when they saw that computer animation. He's like, "I'm done. I'm done." So after that point, he's listed as a consultant because he would chime in on how he thought things should move. But
Oh, okay.
that was such a huge new chapter in film.
So for me, the reason that Terminator 1 is so important is because I had never seen a movie that once it got going, it never stopped. You've got movies where it's
Yeah.
car chases and people get in a wreck, or somebody escapes and then they walk in and they have a beer and they have a cigarette and then they shoot out, and then it kind of does this, right? It goes high, low, high, low.
Yeah.
There's a point at about, I don't know, 45 minutes where it gets into sixth gear and the revs are at 9,000 RPMs and it never stops.
Like the Terminator.
Well, that's what I mean. That's
Yeah,
what I meant.
yeah.
Oh,
No,
like
that's
the
what I'm
Terminator
saying.
stuff. Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, Cameron wanted to emulate that relentlessness of the Terminator.
Yes.
And make that an
And
experience
in
for
the movie
audience.
theater, when I saw it, my sister gasped, "When is this ever going to stop?" You know, and later on she says, "Who's going to stop him? Huh? He's going to destroy everything."
Yeah.
And it wasn't until this giant, thing
Yeah.
came down, and she's like, "Oh, that's not going to stop him." So, we all
Yeah.
had nightmares
And
because
if you have to
couldn't
pee,
stop that.
forget about it.
No,
There's
you-
no
you-
place to get up and pee in that last 45 minutes of the movie.
I'm telling you, if they had a urinal in the movie theater, I'd be the guy putting my credit card in for $10 to use it just
Are you
once.
done with your drink? I need your cup.
I remember in that movie, in that story, when I was watching, I was like, "You guys have time to get it on to create John because it's coming," and then there's you.
Yeah.
and the timeline in that is so screwed up. But I think for its effect, and so I don't know. Can you go back? A lot of people go back to black and white movies, which in my opinion, in some ways, are more perfect than color movies because they do more with less. But some people would the same type of logic. They'll say, "I can't get over the fact that this is black and white, or that the sound is so terrible." And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I mean, I get that, or that the acting is kind of bottled or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's still perfect movies, I think, based on what Andrew was saying, where
Yeah.
it's for its time. Anyway,
Now, just because I don't think Terminator deserves 100%, it's still on my 100 favorite
Yeah,
movies
yeah.
list. I absolutely love it. I just think T2 is the better movie. But
T2, you're right. I think they got everything nailed when the liquid
Yeah.
guy walks out.
Yeah.
I just
oh
thought,
man,
Oh,
Like you realize anything is possible in film when you see a movie like that.
that was
as close as you're going to get Arnold to getting an Oscar performance because he has to play a robot that it just can find a tad bit of emotion.
Yeah,
I understand now why you cry. And it's like it's truly a moving thing for that robot to say that.
Can we give him the? No, sorry.
The thumbs up at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I'm like, I need a vacation. I'm like, it gets humor.
Here's a movie that I totally agree with, and it's something I saw recently. When I say recently, maybe within the last decade or so, but 1944, a noir film called Laura. Are you guys familiar with it? One of the best noir films ever made. I remember watching it for the first time like it was a brand new movie to me, and I gasped and applauded every twist and turn in the film. I absolutely love it. It's basically about a police detective who has to investigate a murder of a woman whose portrait is hanging above her fireplace in her apartment, and he basically falls in love with her portrait. And it's just a masterpiece. One of the greatest noir films ever made. So I'm going to agree with this one. I think
It's
it
been a
deserves
while.
100%.
I'm gonna have to return back.
Says
to that.
If you haven't seen it, watch it. If it's been a while, revisit
I
it.
think you mentioned this movie before. It's on my list. It's just I'm working through it.
It's on the AFI list of one of the top 10 best mystery films of all time.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, but real quick before we go, I on this list they're on number 11. When we were scrolling through this, I found this One Cut of the Dead. It is apparently it's a foreign zombie gore flick but humor. And it's on their list at number
100%.
because I like zombie movies. So when I saw One Cut of the Dead, I put a trailer up. It looks hilarious.
What year?
It's 2017.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was an older one or.
Yeah, no. So
I can't believe there's a zombie movie with 100%
with gore and it's comedy, and they put it up here as
Yeah.
100%, which I
That's a little shocking.
Which one
to
did
me.
you say?
number 11, One Cut of the Dead. 2017. It's got 100% on here. It's a complete. I think it's an Indonesian flick.
I think there's only like 50 reviews or something on it.
Right,
But,
and that's another thing. It
yeah.
had 50 reviews. No, I don't think. Look, no zombie movie deserves 100%.
Japanese.
I agree.
Consistent.
Japanese film.
Yeah.
Oh, Japan. Is it Japanese?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I
okay,
don't
fair
know
enough.
anything
Yeah, then-
about it.
The other zombie film that's closest to, or should be closest to 100%, is 28 Days Later. No.
They're not zombies.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are.
It's zombies. They're just infected.
For
people.
me, my favorite zombie movies are ones that deviate from the tropes that we're so used to, and that makes Shaun of the Dead, in my opinion, one of the best zombie movies because it's
It
like,
is.
how do you
I
find
love it.
humor in that?
I
Very
love
good.
it.
That's what they're comparing this movie, One Cut of the Dead, to. They're
Yeah.
saying it's like Shaun of the Dead. So
Cool.
I saw the trailer for it before I got here. I'm like, okay, I added it to my list. I'm going to go check it out. It's on Shudder.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll see. And then it's obviously not going to get 100%, but if it's entertaining, then great. You know, kudos to these guys. They actually buck the trend and put not just horror, but gory comedy horror.
Now, we're almost an hour into the podcast, and I'm looking at number 19. So let's do this. Let's get away from the Rotten Tomatoes list. Let's talk about your favorite movies that you feel should be at or near 100%. For me, pretty much my top 10 list of my all-time favorite movies, the reason they rank so high is because I think they're flawless. I actually put together a list of 25 movies that I think are flawless, modern movies, and then I have like 10 classic movies. I'm just going to kind of run through my list real quick, and then we'll go around the table. For me, Star Wars is number one, flawless, perfect movie for me. It was just so influential. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
Yes.
Followed closely
Yes.
by The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade is pretty damn flawless. Temple of Doom is pretty flawed.
It's terrible.
Back to the Future, to me, 100%. E.T., 100%. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, one of my all-time films. Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Jaws, of course. Jurassic Park. These are classics. Alien/Aliens. The Matrix blew my mind when I saw that in the theater. I never looked at the world the same way again when I stepped out of the theater. T2 we talked about. A Christmas Story I loved. Beverly Hills Cop. Princess Bride. Vacation. The Dark Knight, I think probably the greatest comic book movie ever made.
Yep.
Pulp Fiction. Every time I look at my list and I see Pulp Fiction, I'm like, that needs to be higher on my list. Pulp Fiction, in my opinion, is a perfect movie, even though I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. The Godfather, Die Hard, the Toy Story trilogy, Paddington 2, of course. Goldfinger, I think, sets the gold standard for every Bond movie that came after it.
I see what you did there.
And
You
and I think one of the most perfect Westerns ever made was Tombstone. I just absolutely like Tombstone. I think there's some Oscar nominations that should have happened that didn't. I think Val Kilmer should have won an Oscar for that role.
Yeah.
So that's my list of flawless movies in my opinion. Now, Nick, we know that you don't think any movies deserve 100%, but what's right up there? What are some movies that you think are?
I had about a
near-
dozen on your list, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to add a couple more, at least one more. One for me, and it also kind of goes to what Andrew says. Depends on when you watch it and what's going on time.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember the first day I saw that in theater because I had not seen any of the trailers going into it, and so when I sat down and I saw it, I said, "Oh my God, dinosaurs exist! You all lied to me." I pointed at my dad like, "You lied to me," and it's a phenomenal movie.
As a side note, trailers suck.
Yeah.
I hate trailers.
Yeah, they
I
either
hate
give too much
trailers.
or
They
not
always
enough
give
or-
too much away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when I'm in this theater and they show me the big thing that everybody else has seen and I haven't, and I gasp, and everybody else looks at me like, "Didn't you see it?" I love not seeing trailers. I will
Yeah.
not. I hate.
It's
I,
a
they
lost
ruin them.
it's a lost art. They used to be good at that. They used to be like
Yeah.
you just get that little. In
in
fact,
a world.
in fact, the Matrix did the best one. They just had this thing. It was like a 20-second thing that says, "What is the Matrix?" I was like, "Yeah, what is the Matrix?" Now I have to go find
Yeah.
out.
Well, Jurassic Park, I think what the trailers did in Jurassic Park was, all right, so I read the book twice before they even announced that Spielberg was doing the movie.
Yeah.
And when they said Spielberg's doing the movie, even though I was the biggest Spielberg fan on the planet, I'm like, he can't pull this off. There's no way. What the trailer accomplished is me sitting there with my arms folded going, "Nah." And then they show the trailer, and I'm like, oh, my God. They exceeded my expectations. So that trailer was enough to whet my appetite and go, I need to. I actually saw it. I still have my ticket stub, believe it or not.
You do?
I saw it the
Nice.
Thursday night.
Yeah.
When it opened the Thursday night before
At
the
midnight?
Friday. Yeah, that's when I saw. Actually, I think it was 10 p.m. I saw
Oh, okay.
on Thursday.
Which theater?
Might have been the Palladium. I'm not sure though. In Birmingham, it might have been.
I
I'm
mean, it
not
was
sure.
Showcase Auburn Hills.
Yeah, but the trailer is what pulled me in and said this is a must see. And you know how they break comic books into like Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Modern Age. Jurassic Park ushered in a new age where you watch Jurassic Park and you're like, movies will never be the same again.
Yep.
And that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing.
It was my Star Wars moment. Sorry, it's what
go
you
ahead.
guys got to have in 1977. I got to have in 1994. When you guys probably saw the Star Destroyer flying overhead, and whatever your reactions were, that's as close as I can get.
What
Yeah.
part specifically of Jurassic Park did you fall out of your seat on? Because I have a specific part.
It was when they grab Sattler's head and turn and says, "You got to see it," and they see the Brontosaurus or Brachiosaurus. Sorry, Brachiosaurus.
That's the one where Helen not Helen Hunt. It's
Laura Dern.
Laura Dern.
Yeah.
Thank you. And she's like, we haven't seen flower
This is
or plants
poisonous.
like these for 10,000. He goes, no, honey.
Samuel's
She's like, what?
Yeah.
And she goes, and
And-
she stands up. You're like, what are they seeing? What are they seeing? What are they seeing? And that moment, you're like,
And they paired it with John Williams' score at the same time because it was
Yes.
building in from the helicopter ride all the way in.
Yeah.
yes.
And it hit that right moment. So for
Yeah.
me, so when my brother who's older than me, he's like, yeah, and when I saw Star Wars, and I saw the start, I was like, yeah, that's my moment. I'll never get that moment with you guys in 1977, but I got
For me
close.
with Jurassic Park, the Brachiosaurus scene for me was like a great appetizer.
Yeah.
For me, the meal was the T-Rex escape.
I was
That
just
was
gonna
the
say that,
most
yeah.
epic, exciting, terrifying, fun moment I had sitting in a movie theater. I'm sitting here clutching the arms of my chair watching this fake dinosaur on screen, and it's making me feel all these emotions. It was, to me, the T-Rex escape was
the
incredible.
water shaking from the
Yeah.
impact tremors.
Yeah,
was
the build up, that slow build up,
What
and
was
the goat.
was the closest I got to you guys having Jaws? The
Oh, yeah.
dun,
Sure.
dun, dun.
Yeah.
It's not.
And the
sound-
little girl's face going,
Yeah.
like, what's coming?
And then they infuse the humor, like when the lawyer gets out of the car and runs. Where's he going? When you gotta go, you gotta go. When to mix the horror and the humor, it's so brilliant.
The special effects there still stands the test of time
Yeah,
because
they still look great.
they
do.
had to knock it out of
Holds
the park
up
because
so well.
you're first out the gate. You can't screw it up. If you
Yeah.
fall, everyone falls behind you.
Sure.
Yeah,
The pressure that they were in.
When
Yeah.
I begged my mom to take me to see it, and it had to make it to the 50-cent theater. So it was later on in the summer of '93. But
yeah.
so I was only 9 when I saw that. So that, like when the T-Rex escaped, and there was a 9-year-old kid, I was terrified,
Yeah.
but in the best way possible.
Oh yeah.
And then
Like a roller coaster.
towards
ride. Yeah.
towards the end when the Raptors are
Oh, I love it.
and then Laura Dern has to go like turn the power back on, and
The hand.
Samuel L.
Arnold
Jackson,
Jackson.
that scared the crap out of me. But no, like that's one of those magical movie moments that I will never forget. Is seeing that with my mom, a neighbor friend, my sister. My dad might have went. I think my grandma went. Like a bunch of us went. It was one of the best moments of my childhood.
I had a friend who has passed away, but when he was a Vietnam vet, and he came back, and he went to Vietnam, and his friends kept saying, "You got to see this movie. It's a space movie." He's like, "What? I don't really care about space movies and things like that." He'd always seen these things when he was a kid, of like Buck Rogers,
Yeah.
and the Buck Rogers is being held together with these, with these
The wire. You can
strings of
see the wires.
and
Yeah.
and they have like
And-
smoke, and somebody's
and the
like
sparkle in the
somebody's
back.
sparklers and things like that. And he walked into 2001 and it knocked him on his ass.
Yeah.
He said everything had gravity. He said
Yeah.
everything looked impressive. Like
Yeah.
the sets looked like they were made out of metal, like they were in outer space. Like this was
Yeah.
something that was
It has more of a documentary feel
Yeah.
than,
It does.
than a fictional feel.
like
Yeah.
you're being and he said that just absolutely knocked him on his feet. And he said there was a number of movies that had already had a budget for the 70s. One of them being Logan's Run. There's a couple of them that were like that. And people just said, "Are you going in reverse?"
Yeah.
Because this looks terrible.
Yeah,
then when
take a
Star
step
Wars came out, it was like, okay, they picked up the ball, they picked up the baton where it was left off,
Yeah.
and they're going with
And
it.
then Star Wars showed what was possible.
And then Star Wars, yeah,
for
Yeah.
space sci-fi.
Yeah,
movies,
and getting away from the shiny,
The clean.
pointy spaceships
Yeah.
to dirty, rusty, broken down.
But
it's so cool.
it looked lived in.
Yeah.
Right. It looked like, oh, this really did take place millions of years ago or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And you saw the documentary on all that, the guys that actually built all that,
Oh,
right?
sure. Oh,
it's
definitely,
such
yeah.
a great documentary. They
Yeah.
talk about making them and making them
the
look
models.
like. Yeah,
I think
Speaking of those guys, you reminded me of a great story that I heard where Star
Lay it on
Wars
us.
had their premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater, and there were kids and stuff in the audience who saw it. And so, of course, when the movie ended and everyone was exiting the theater, there were kids with their programs asking people to sign their programs. And the group of the model makers came out like, "Man, I can't believe that was us." And little kids were like, "Can you sign my program?" And they're like, "Oh, no, we weren't actors. And we made the spaceships." And the kids were like, "Oh my God, sign my program."
They freaked out over
These
it.
model makers were superstars
overnight.
because of Star Wars. That's like people cared about how this movie was made. Prior to that, I don't think people were like, I wonder how they did that. Star Wars made these guys rock stars.
it's it's interesting. You guys point out the lived-in factor. That's kind of when Spaceballs came out. That's why they made it a Winnebago because they felt the Millennium Falcon was Chewie and for heirs to live. That's their home,
That's
and so
right.
they made it as
Why
Mel Brooks
not?
is like, I made it a Winnebago because they live in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, the land speeder was my Chevy Monza. I had a 1980 Chevy Monza hatchback
Nice.
that was beige with stripes on it. And it had a V8 engine,
V8
which
engine,
was
though,
cool, but
yeah.
it looked like garbage. And you relate to that stuff on the screen, that Luke had this vehicle that looked like he had taken it
When he
apart
gets
and put
into
it
that,
together.
right off the bat exactly. I felt like that. It was like, this is something he's modded. This is a beater car or a beater
It is.
land speed or whatever. You just knew it right off the bat.
Yeah.
It's a farm kid who gets that old clunker and has to fix it up in the backyard.
Exactly. And it's a
It is.
convertible, all of that.
Yeah.
But the one thing about going back to Jurassic Park, it's the perfect shot. You had the perfect cast, the right director, the right score, Stan Winston, and the special. The first time you were having digital, so you had the practical and you had the digital.
Yeah.
It all came together at the right time.
You're right.
And when if you get it at the right, you'll never get a team like that again.
Yeah.
They all came together at the right time, and if you nail it, you become legendary.
That's again, I'm going to go put my hat on of just being the old curmudgeon who's complaining all the time. But really, has there been a movie in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that had the impact that some of these movies that I listed have, where like you walk out of the theater?
I think about it, yeah, probably,
It's
but
like, these were game changers. Like, when we did our podcast on the year of 1984, I could rattle off 10 movies that came out in 1984 that are on my 100 favorite movie
To
list.
this
Like
day.
every weekend I'm in the theater going, this is amazing. It doesn't happen anymore, I don't think.
And I can't blame streaming because look, when Barbie and Oppenheimer came out, people were going out there, and if you give them a reason, a modicum of reason to go, they'll go and they'll put $1 billion in.
Yeah.
Captain America, it's getting panned by the critics, but people still want to go see it because they want to go to the theater. If you give
They
them a
do.
reason, they'll go to the theater. You got to give them a reason.
Yeah.
a reason to get out of the house.
Andrew,
To
throw some.
your-
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To your point, I think that maybe this list is to us a wake-up call that there is some really great stuff out there,
Yeah.
but it's not so
It's not reaching the masses.
it's not reaching the masses. So maybe most of the stuff that we're seeing today now is packaged and repackaged and so overdone and so that it's hard for us to even enjoy it.
Yeah.
We just showed my daughter The Shining the other day, and we had to do it over two nights, and you have to watch it all at once, and it lost a lot of its energy and a lot of its momentum. But she still loved it. And I said, "You loved it?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah. I told all my friends I want to see it with them." And I said, "Really? You loved it?" She goes, "It's like nothing I've ever seen before."
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I wonder if people would have said that back then. Maybe they would have. But she's saying it for different reasons.
Yeah.
She's seeing things that are overdone, overhyped, and everything.
Hollywood's
She goes
moved away from that.
and she goes into this, and it's got long scenes of just this kid on a tricycle or on a big wheel.
Yeah.
And with the music in the background, and you add that in, and it sets a really great tone. I don't think that the OCD generation could sit through this, and
Right.
really, but she did. Thank God.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just a different.
Yeah, and something else that I don't know got away from Hollywood, I guess. Think about the movie Shrek. Now, when Shrek came out, if I remember correctly, opening weekend, I think it finished 6th or 7th or 8th for the week. And then people were like, "Hey, have you seen Shrek?" And I'm like, "No, what is that?" And it's like, it's this animated movie. You got to go see it. So week 2, it was like 7th. Week 3, it was 5th. Week 4, it was 3rd. Week 5, it was 2nd. Like, word of mouth, it got higher and higher and higher until it hit number 1 and hung at number 1. You just don't see that anymore. Like, word of mouth saying you got to go see this flick. I don't know.
Everywhere, I think
disenchanted.
everything everywhere all at once was pretty good for me.
Yeah.
That knocked me back. Was it as much as what you're talking about? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But again, I don't
It's
think
a
that
really good
appeals
question.
to the masses. Is it a good movie? Yes. Does it appeal to the masses? I know if I were to take my sisters to go see that movie, they'd be like, "What the hell is this? What is going on?" It's not for the masses. But Andrew, I want you to rattle off a couple of movies that are at or near 100% for you.
Okay. One.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
You Matt Damon'd him.
No, go ahead.
So a movie you recently watched, which you said you didn't care as much for, I think Blade Runner 2049 is a brilliant movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love the story, and on a technical level, it is beautiful.
100%.
The Hans Zimmer soundtrack, Roger Deakins cinematography, that Ana de Armas CGI is beautiful in more ways than one. I don't know. I saw that in the theater, and I fell in love with it instantly. I absolutely loved it. Nobody saw it. It basically made its budget back, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then another one, people always laugh at me when I say this, but I think it is a brilliant comedy, is Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That is a brilliant comedy. It's really well done.
Think about it. Tim Burton is a nobody. Paul Rubens has this goofy character, and he gets a little bit of money from Warner Brothers to make this film. And it's first of all, this is selfish of me, but it's my favorite type of movie, like a road movie. Like he's on his, and he encounters these things and these weird people along the way to try to get his bike. I don't know why when I first saw it, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and it was love at first sight.
Oh, yeah.
And I would watch that movie every Saturday.
Yeah.
And
if I was to break my 100 favorite movie list into like genres, it would be on several different lists. I think it's one of the greatest comedies ever made, and it's one of the greatest road trip movies ever made.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
And this is going to make you happy. Years ago, when my niece was probably 8, 9, 10, something like that, I was like, I wanted to get her something for Christmas, and I'm like, what do you like? Like, what's your favorite movie? And she said, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yes.
Now, she's only like 20-something now. So this current young generation watched Pee-wee and said, this is brilliant. So
it gives me a little bit of hope for the future.
Yeah. So I agree with you on that one.
Are we going to can we list a couple of things of our favorites on the 100 list, or we do that later?
Well, go ahead.
I just have a couple that are on the 100 list, but that really
that you
stood
agree
out
with? Okay.
2 courtroom movies, 12 Angry Men and Anatomy of a Murder.
Yeah.
But watch both those.
Those are awesome.
But those were required watching for a couple of my political science classes.
Yeah.
Which, Woody Allen's Sleeper. Have you guys seen that?
It's so.
I haven't seen it in decades.
So
I'm not a Woody Allen.
There are
guy.
3 Woody Allen movies on this list.
I know. I tried.
Annie Hall.
So recently I looked at the AFI list, and this is kind of similar to the 100% Club list. So the American Film Institute did their 100 greatest movie list, and then they updated it like 10 years later, whatever. And I was going to ask you guys this. Of the 100 movies that are on that list, how many have you seen? And I'm at like 95. Like, I made an effort to see as many of those as possible.
Are you talking about when they ended it at 2000? Because I have the poster from when they ended it at 2000. They said, of the 20th century, here's what we're saying is the top. Or are you talking about it after that?
No, you're right. I don't think there's any modern movies on this list. The first one came out in 97, and then they did one, I think, in 2007. It was like the 10th anniversary. Yeah. But there's
I've
no
seen
movies
like
on that list.
95 or 98 out of those 100 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is, I'm like, okay, there's like 5 or 6 movies I need to see on this list. One of them was Annie Hall. I went to Apple TV. It was available. I watched the trailer, and I was like, I can't watch this. He just doesn't appeal to me. And again, maybe it has something to do with the fact that he's been impersonated and he's influenced so many, like, Larry David stuff. I'm sure has origins in Woody Allen,
big time.
So
Seinfeld,
he's been imitated and and homage and all that stuff. But I looked at the trailer and I'm like, this just isn't for me. Even if someone was like, I'm going to give you money to finish that 100 list, that would probably be the last movie I watch, and I would watch.
That's too bad. I would, as a film expert, as a film critic, you need to sit through it, even if you have to hold a gun to your own head. Do it.
It's hard.
I might have asked you this before, but have you seen any of his more recent movies?
No. Like I said,
Midnight in Paris.
Midnight in Paris is.
I know.
Oh, Joe, it is so good.
One of the things that you're missing is if you can step outside of him, he directs really well.
Yes.
And he's got some fantastic people. And one of my most favorite scenes is there's a hallway, and the hallway has 2 doors that go this way, and then there's a room at the end of the hallway. And the camera just sits there, and the audio is going. And people are walking in and out, and they're interrupting each other. And I think what he told them is, here's where I want you to start, and here's where I want you to end. And I don't want it to be more than 30 or 45 seconds or whatever it is. And there's no memorized script, which I can't remember what that style is called, but it's so natural and so funny and so interesting that I'm just going, this is a documentary. I'm just sitting there listening, but it's funny as hell.
Yeah.
That very subtle comedy that, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Mighty Aphrodite is pretty funny, isn't he? In that is there's
So Woody Allen, he's not actually in Midnight in Paris.
Right.
Owen Wilson plays what his stand-in would have been in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then he did the 2 movies with Scarlett Johansson. The one with Hugh Jackman, and they're playing golf. Oh, no. There's the one playing golf. Anyway, Match Point, and then the other one with Hugh Jackman. Excellent movies. But anyway, this German film I saw, it's called Ali, Fear Eats the Soul.
Wait. What?
It's all pops and buzzes over here.
It's called Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. Came out in the 70s. Excellent movie. Recently, we talked about this with the music when we had the musical episode. The Talking Heads documentary called Stop Making Sense. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
You're a Talking Heads fan, right?
I am.
Yes.
All right.
Terminator's on here. Toy Story 1. Lady Bird, which you said you didn't like. I loved it. But it spoke to me because that took place in 2003 when she was a senior in high school, and I was a senior in high school in 2003. They're talking about the Iraq War.
So that got 100% on.
Until one knucklehead screwed it up.
Maybe that was me. I don't know.
And then they have the original Grinch half-hour thing.
Oh yeah.
No, see,
Wait, it's not a film.
No,
but-
if it wasn't in the theater, I don't count it.
Yeah.
That was a TV special.
And then they have
Made for TV.
a John Mulaney hour special.
Which
is
so
it's not a
odd.
film.
Those are so
Film, but-
odd.
I agree. Anyway,
Yeah.
those are mine that I wanted to.
So do you have any more that you think should be on that list that
Should-
might not necessarily be?
That's I don't think I could
All right,
come up with any at the moment. Yeah, I don't have any.
George.
now.
Any movies?
I know that we are quickly out of
What do
time
we got? We got
here.
about 9 minutes.
Okay. So Silence of the Lambs to me
Oh.
broke my brain.
Yes.
The fact that he was already captured, Anthony Hopkins was already captured, and Jodie Foster comes in, and he's playing with her mind,
Yeah.
just ruined me.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about her getting the answers; it was about getting what he wanted first.
Yeah.
That broke my brain. That was absolutely amazing.
I've never seen a movie, or that ranks right up there with like Pulp Fiction and movies that messed me up
for
Yeah.
days.
during like not only like during the viewing, but like you can't get it out of your head. It changes you, it rewires you, and I can't think of another movie that I sat there watching where I was physically shaking. I was shaking.
Schindler's List was that for me, where you
Yeah.
was actually shaking. But
Yeah.
but I know what you mean. You have this
Yeah.
actual this reaction.
Yeah. So it's not. I've only watched it once. I haven't rewatched it because I can't do that to myself. Do I agree with you? Yes, I do agree with you. It's a masterpiece because it manipulates you just like Hannibal Lecter would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's number one. Did you have any?
No, that was great.
Inception for me
Ooh.
was next level because you really had to pay attention. Inception, if I had seen it in the movie theater, would have been terrible.
Right.
I have to have the subtitles on, and I have to be able to rewind something 5 and 10 times in some cases.
Sure.
And with that to me was a kick-ass. Like where was it Nolan?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
the one.
Nolan, I think he thinks of his viewers as these are bright,
Yeah.
non-beer drinking, hell raising. I just want, a bouncer falls in love with I want a thoughtful, what's the word I'm looking for, Nick?
So it's not a Michael Bay audience.
No, it's not.
And his
Even though it has some things in common with
Right.
Michael Bay, but
It does have some things in common
his,
with it.
that movie especially, but most of his films are very mathematical. Like
Left brain,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very, and so I'm watching this, and I'm going, okay, and it goes one step deep, and then it goes 2 steps deep, and the whole thing with Joseph Gordon-Levitt,
yeah.
and the whole thing's turning, and they've
Yeah.
got the little spinner things.
Yeah.
All of that to me was a straight kick in the mental balls. And I absolutely loved
I love that term. Since we're talking about it, Andrew, I thought you would appreciate this if you haven't already seen it. I was scrolling on TikTok one day, and for some reason, I get a lot of Family Guy clips on my TikTok.
For some reason. You have no idea why.
I always pause and watch them, and some of it I find very offensive, but some of it makes me laugh out loud. And one that made me laugh out loud, I'm scrolling on TikTok. Peter's sitting on a couch. He's watching TV, and you hear a narrator on the TV go, "Coming this summer from Christopher Nolan," and he goes, "I'm already confused." And I thought that was hysterical because I don't know what the hell is going on in a Christopher Nolan film. I just know that I'm enjoying the ride.
Yeah, Tenet lost me,
I'm
but I had to watch it
ride.
again, and it was cool.
And Interstellar, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm loving every second of it. So just the fact that he's like, "I'm lost," and it was like the beginning of the trailer. I thought
in Inception's one of the rare ones where the protagonist is the villain. That's why I love it. He killed his wife. He killed his wife. He was selfish as hell. Wow. Everything that happened was because he was selfish, and he got selfish with his wife, and he wanted to try that Inception.
I need to go back and read it again, watch it again.
He tried it on her.
See,
he did it to her.
You're peeling the onion, man.
He did it to his wife, and then his wife went and did that to him because she was so. And he was like, "Oh, I can talk my wife out of it." No, you're not. And then she frames you for murder. Now you can't see your kids. Now you're committing crimes for that, and you dragged all these other people in. You sick.
Yeah.
George, any others?
Yeah, a couple more. Again, going back to just very, very briefly, a lot of the original Pixar movies, The Incredibles for me hit me at a time when I was a father. I had 4 kids and they had 3, and I felt just like him. I felt like before I got, when my wife and I got married, we played in bands. We lived the rock and roll lifestyle. We lived in Taiwan. We studied Mandarin. We studied Chinese, all this, and we traveled and we had a great time. And suddenly we went from feeling like we were the Incredibles, like the Mr. and Mrs. Incredible. And it's funny because I completely sitting in the movie theater was like, this was written for me. This is my movie. It was written directly for me. It jacked into my DNA, into my head. Yeah. It was crazy.
And then what was it? 20 years later, your wife is probably watching Incredibles 2.
And it's her movie.
That one speaks to me. And that's one of the greatest sequels ever made, in my
just
opinion.
Absolutely great. So there's that. Wall-E to me and I've told you guys about this before, where the first 45 minutes is just silent and it's the end of the world, is utterly horrific to me, and at the same time, absolutely beautiful. And I love that. Next ones, I'll just very quickly, because I travel a lot, I love Before Sunrise. If you've ever seen Before Sunrise, it's Ethan
I have a
Hawke
buddy that loves the whole
Julie
trilogy.
Delpy.
There's a trilogy, right?
Yes, there is.
So
and they shoot
I
them
need
every
to,
10 years.
I need to do the trilogy.
Yeah, I need to watch
If you haven't traveled, and if you haven't had a fling with a girl, if you haven't met somebody that you kind of want to fall in love with on the spot, but then you catch yourself, and then you kind of fall in love, and then you catch yourself, and she's doing the same thing, and in a night, you can go from not knowing them at all to feeling like you've known them for 10 years. That's what that movie's about. And it's very loosely scripted again. I absolutely love it. And then finally, I saw Full Metal Jacket when I was, 12 years old. No, I was 16. And Arlie Ermy scared the mother living hell.
And he wasn't an actor. Like, he was a
he was
sergeant,
brought in to be the guy who taught the guy that they were.
Yep.
And he went walking around, toe jam, this and that. He's like getting super mad at people. And the way, that's 2 movies in one. And the second part of it is okay. But that first part in basic training, that broke my brain. Anyway, there's.
You got me thinking we got to do a future podcast on some of the greatest lines in movie history, because there's some lines in Full Metal Jacket. Like, isn't there one, what's your major malfunction or something like that?
What is your major malfunction?
Like there's lines that transcend the movie. So we may have to dedicate a podcast to the greatest movie lines at some point. But we are just about out of time. I feel like, despite talking about this for 90 minutes, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface.
Guys, this is one of my favorite. I said this last time. This is one of my favorite nights ever. This is what a fun.
George, actually, when he brought up Wall-E, it made me think of Chaplin's The Kid. Because that first 45 minutes, it's all silent.
It's so wonderful.
And there's a couple of Chaplin movies on the list, 100%. Yeah.
Chaplins are
Gold
fun.
Rush,
and those are emotional, and you're just,
Yeah.
They come take him away from him while he's in the house, and the kid's screaming and pulling him away.
And, you know, and George actually brought up the one of the few movies where I actually get misty at no matter what time. It's Forrest Gump when he's saying goodbye to Sally Field. He's like, "What's my destiny, Mama?" And I go, "Oh, that part always gets me."
I
Keep
thought
talking about
the
it.
grave site when he's at Jenny's grave.
I'm just bawling.
That's traumatic, man. On that note,
I bawled my eyes out.
thanks, guys.
The movies, watch Charlie Chaplin, and put some sunshine into your day. Forget the hard times, come to the movies, and try to laugh your troubles away.